In 1979, Holden didn't just win Bathurst, they absolutely humiliated the entire field. Imagine being so dominant. You almost lapped the entire field at the biggest races in the world. At Monaco in 1988, Ayrton Senna was over 50 seconds ahead of teammate Alain Prost. He had lapped everybody else before crashing because he was still pushing too hard. In 1975, Richard Petty led 234 of 400 laps and won NASCAR's World 600 by an entire lap. And in 1967, AJ Foyt won the Indianapolis 500 by 2 laps. Because he was the only driver to finish all 200 laps. This wasn't racing. This was complete domination. But then, an Australian touring car driver did something almost impossible. Peter Brock won Bathurst by 6 laps. 6 entire laps at one of the hardest racetracks in the world against factory-backed teams in a brutal 1,000-kilometre endurance race. To this day, it is still considered one of the most dominant victories in motorsport history. In America, they call the Daytona 500 the Great American Race. It is more than just a race. It is tradition. It is history. A yearly pilgrimage for hundreds of thousands of fans. And in Australia, we have our own version, the Bathurst 1000. Australians simply call it the Great Race. Unlike America, Australia never really had NASCAR. We did not grow up with huge V8 stock cars racing on oval tracks every weekend. What we did have were full-body touring cars, real production-based sedans, Holdens, cars that actually looked like what Australians drove on the street. That is what made Bathurst different. Fans did not just watch these cars, they identified with them. If your family drove a Holden, you backed Holden. If your family drove a Ford, you backed Ford. Every October, tens of thousands of Australians make the pilgrimage to Mount Panorama. They camp on top of the mountain for days. They build makeshift campsites, they drink, they party, they barely sleep. And at night, the mountain becomes complete chaos. To Australians, Bathurst is not just a race meeting, it is a national event. But what really makes Bathurst legendary is the circuit itself. Because Mount Panorama isn't a purpose-built racetrack. It's a public road, wrapped around the side of a mountain. And nowhere else in world motorsport combines speed, danger, and elevation, quite like this place. A lap begins on Pit Straight. Drivers launch toward Hell Corner, the first left-hander on the circuit. Get the exit wrong here, and you'll pay for it all the way up Mountain Straight. Because once the wheel is straight, it's full throttle. The car surges uphill toward Griffin's Bend, approaching 290 kilometers an hour as the mountain rises beneath it. The road crests. The car goes light. Then drivers throw it into the negatively cambered right-hander. Concrete walls waiting on the exit. From there, the real climb begins. The cutting. A steep, blind left-hander carved directly into the mountain. You can't see the exit until you're already committed. And from that point on, the walls never really leave. Quarry Corner, Solomon Park, McPhillamy Park. This is where bravery matters. The car dances across bumps at high speed, loaded against the concrete barriers, with nothing but sky visible beyond the windscreen. Then comes Skyline, the highest point on the circuit. The road simply disappears beneath the bonnet. And that's when gravity takes over. The car plunges downhill into the S's and the Dipper. The road literally falls away beneath the drivers, while they thread 1,600-kilogram touring cars between concrete walls. If Americans know Laguna Seca's famous corkscrew, imagine that. At over 250 kilometers an hour, with concrete walls inches away, for lap after lap, the car unloads over the crest, dives downhill, then compresses violently into the Dipper.
My gosh, oh no, the Dipper! The old Dipper!
One mistake, and you're in the fence. And just when drivers survive the S's and the Dipper, they still face one of the most important corners on the entire circuit. Forrest's Elbow, a tight left-hander sitting at the bottom of the mountain. Get it wrong, and your lap is ruined. Get it right, and you're rewarded with one of the greatest straights in motorsport, Conrod Straight. And this is where Bathurst changes completely. One moment, drivers are balancing touring cars through narrow mountain switchbacks. The next, they're flat out at over 300 kilometres an hour, 180 miles per hour, in a full-bodied touring car, on a public road, for decades. Conrod Straight was terrifying. No chicane, no slowdown, just absolute top speed. Then in the late 1980s, speeds became so extreme, officials were forced to add a braking section known as the chase. Drivers arrive after one of the longest full-throttle sections in world touring car racing, before standing on the brakes and throwing the car through the fastest chicane in Australian motorsport. Then comes Murray's Corner. One final braking zone, one final chance to attack, hook the apex, get back on the throttle, and fire onto pit straight to complete a lap of Mount Panorama. A public road, a mountain, concrete walls, 300 kilometres an hour. That's what makes Bathurst different. That's what makes Bathurst feared. And that's why Bathurst is still known as the Great Race. But the real question is this: how does one driver win Australia's biggest race by 6 laps? Because while Peter Brock was driving at the absolute peak of his powers, he also had one of the greatest touring cars ever built. The Holden LX Torana first arrived in showrooms in 1976. But the car Brock raced at Bathurst wasn't just a road car. It was the final result of years of development by Holden and the Holden dealer team. And by 1979, the A9X had become the ultimate evolution of the Torana. On paper, Ford looked stronger. The Falcons carried bigger 351 cubic inch V8s. They made more power. They looked intimidating. But Bathurst isn't one on paper. It's one over 1,000 brutal kilometres. Up mountains, through concrete-lined corners, and down one of the fastest straights in Australia. And that's where the Torana came alive. It was around 300 kilograms lighter than the big Falcon hardtops. That meant it accelerated harder, stopped better, used less tyre, used less brake, and put less stress on every component lap after lap. While the Falcons were fighting the circuit, the Torana was working with it. A massive Salisbury differential improved reliability. 4-wheel disc brakes delivered consistent stopping power, and brake cooling ducts helped the car stay effective hour after hour. But perhaps the biggest advantage was the way it handled. Holden's radial tune suspension transformed the Torana. It turned sharper. It stayed composed, and across the narrow mountain section, Brock could place the car exactly where he wanted. Millimetres from the walls, lap after lap. So while the Falcons had more horsepower, the Torana was lighter, more efficient, better balanced, and perfectly suited to Mount Panorama. By 1979, the Ford Falcon had reached the end of its development. The A9X Torana was reaching perfection. But even the perfect car needed the perfect driver. And Peter Brock was about to prove exactly why he became known as the King of the Mountain. If America had Dale Earnhardt, the Intimidator, Australia had Peter Brock, the King of the Mountain. To Australians, Peter Brock wasn't just a racing driver. He was a national sporting icon, a hero whose name became inseparable from Mount Panorama. By the time he retired, Brock had won Australia's great race an astonishing 9 times, a record that still stands today. He earned the nickname the King of the Mountain because no one mastered Bathurst quite like Peter Brock. But Brock's greatness wasn't just about raw speed. It was about precision, mechanical sympathy, and the rare ability to drive flat out without abusing the car. While others wore out their tyres, overheated their brakes, or pushed too hard too early, Brock simply kept getting faster, and nowhere was that more evident than at Bathurst in 1979. Everything, the car, the driver, the team, it all came together in one of the greatest performances motorsport has ever seen. As the checkered flag approached, Peter Brock wasn't protecting his lead. He wasn't conserving the car. He was making history. He started from pole position. He led every lap. On the final lap, he set a brand new lap record and crossed the finish line, 6 laps ahead of the field. In motorsport, they call that perfection. Watch this final lap and witness one of the greatest drives ever recorded.
Story in 1975. The 1 lap to go flag will come out. The signal has been given to Peter Brock. And there you can see on the right the crowd in the pit road signalling this great driver. Ranks probably as, well, right in there alongside Alan Moffat as one of the great touring car drivers in Australia. The record is on the board, as they like to say, going up Avco Mountain Straight now for the final time. Not allowed to snap in concentration because he still has 3/4 of a lap to complete. Here he comes.
Faultless performance by the Marlborough Holden dealer team, led by John Shepherd, and of course this car driven by Peter Brock and Jim Richards, not headed at any stage of the event.
Just overlapping there the 10th place car, the McDonnell Bell Alfetta, up to the cutting once again. And wait for the reaction of spectators, the thousands upon thousands of them up the top part of the circuit who will be down near the fences. You'll be able to hear their cheers as Peter Brock, 05 for the Marlborough Holden dealer team, comes across the mountain. The man who has conquered the mountain 3 times and staring a 4th in the face. Here he comes. Listen to the applause, the accolades for a man among men when it comes to race car drivers. Still tidy. Picks up the inside rear wheel that time. Peter Brock is trying and trying hard in this last lap. It'll be known as not only the race in which this car led every lap of the race, but it'll be interesting to check his final lap time. We have a timer on him. Conrod straight away. There you can see Bathurst in the background. Peter Brock wants to see one thing and one thing only, the checkered flag for his 4th Bathurst Hardy Frodo 1000 win. And here he comes down Breville Conrod Straight for the final time. No traffic to worry him. He's in good shape. It's been a long race, a race that this car has led every lap of. Down into the braking area, back through the gears. Listen to the crowd warming up. A checkered flag unfolds, a page in history as Peter Brock in the Marlborough Holden dealer team comes across to take the checkered flag for the Peter Brock. And you'll probably find that his lap time will read somewhere in the 2:22, 2:21
point something.
He's done it. What a season for this incredibly
9 Bathurst
driver,
victories
the man
would
who
eventually
only a
define
month ago
Peter
went
Brock's
round
career.
Australia.
But in
The,
1979,
Repco
everything came
reliability
together.
trial led
The
the
perfect
1-2-3
car,
finish for Commodore.
the perfect driver,
He's
the
just picked
perfect
up another
race,
Hardy Frodo
a victory that will never be repeated